get started with our workshop. So I would like to invite Robert Stuursma to the stage. One note to all the participants. So if you have a question, feel free to post it in the Q&A. Depending on the content of the question, I will answer this immediately or have Robert answer it, or we do it at the end of the workshop. We also have we'll have a couple of polls in the workshop, so yeah, be ready, so to say. All right, Robert, I would say let's get started.
Yes, thank you very much, Tibor. I'd like to start off by giving a small introduction of myself. My name is Robert Stuursma. I'm the product owner for the Sigrid platforms, or more specifically, I should say, one of the product owners. And from the moment I finished my studies, I've actually been focused on trying to make the complex simple. I think that's very important. I had a look at the many different roles that are attending today. We have some C-level people, but we also have developers, architects. We have a wide variety of people, and that is really exciting. We have a really nice turn-up, and that is a nice testament to the importance of the question that we are going to be answering today, or at least trying to answer today, because what we're going to be focusing on is how to manage build quality and security in large portfolios with Sigrid. So when you want to ensure build quality and security, you need to get a grip on technical debt. And technical debt is a buzzword, and I already mentioned that I want to keep it really simple. So I'm going to be a little bit more practical here and explain our vision of technical debt. So technical debt, when you look it up on the internet, you will typically get a story about shortcuts being taken, leading to costs that are incurred when you want to basically repair the shortcuts you've taken at some earlier point in time. And to me, that doesn't really resonate, because from our years of practice in the field of software quality, we find that it's not always a conscious decision to introduce technical debt or to make shortcuts. It just happens. So I would like to ask you to focus on the graph that's on the left of the screen, where we see a line of perfect quality. So technical debt, if you ask me, it's the delta between perfect quality and the actual quality of a system or a portfolio. You see the line of perfect quality going up. That is because the market is evolving constantly. We get better technologies, we get better tooling, developers are improving in skills. Basically, if you sit still, you already start incurring technical debt. Well, another thing we typically see over time, and that's in part something that Pepijn also addressed, is that people keep piling on new functionality on existing architectures, and that also leads to a decline in quality. Well, if you really get to that final red bar, so the technical debt has basically become too big, then a system becomes unmanageable, and it would basically become end of life, and you would need to phase it out. You would need to find some way of, well, replacing it. Well, I already mentioned the term quality. I want to be a little bit more specific there as well. So when I talk about quality, I would really like to connect it to the international standard for software product quality, ISO 25010. And ISO 25010 shows us the following quality aspects. You can read them from the screen. I'm not going to read them all. For today, I would really like to focus on security and maintainability, and for good reason. I mean, I don't have to explain to anyone here that a security incident can be detrimental to your organization. That's why it's really important to have your security in order. The second one, maintainability. I would like to put the focus there because it's the cornerstone of the rest of the quality aspects. You can imagine that if it's hard to maintain a code base, it's also very hard to ensure that the other quality aspects are in proper order. To be very concrete, in a system that has poor maintainability, it's very hard to basically tackle bugs or ensure usability or focus on performance efficiency. So that should give you some idea of our idea of technical debt. Wait, yes. Oh, sorry, I went a slide too far. So, but you might wonder, why should I care about technical debt? And that is because we've seen it all too many times that it negatively impacts business objectives of your organization. So if you have a system that has a lot of technical debt, you will see that it has a slow time to market. It might have downtime. It's costly to maintain. When you need to scale it up to meet demand, you might run into problems. There's compliance issues. Basically, technical debt has a lot of impact on your business. And at the same time, we realize that most of your daily work will be in regards to functionality. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because that's exactly why we built Sigrid. We built Sigrid to focus on the non-functional aspects on technical debt, so you can focus on the functionality and you can find technical debt, you can prioritize it, repair it, even prevent it, and at some point reflect on your progress and your development maturity. As Tibor already mentioned, if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to ask. I'm not able to see the Q&A. Tibor will assist me there. Yeah, so I already said I want to keep it very simple. We see this box here. It represents a software portfolio, and large organizations can have up to hundreds of systems that are interconnected in various ways. And these systems typically fall into separate categories. You have the commercial off the shelf, which is, for example, this can be word processors, spreadsheets, applications, other productivity tooling. And on the total other end of the spectrum, we have the custom built software. As organizations become more complex, they also get more requirements on the functionality that they need. And for that reason, we see that sometimes there's just no application you can purchase and you really need to have custom built software. Then there's also a hybrid variant, which is the modifiable off the shelf, which is a bit of an in-between. You have some standard component and it has some modules that either the source code needs to be adapted or you do some configuration, but it's really a hybrid. So when purchasing and building software, you have to be aware of the challenges there are. The benefit of buying something off the shelf is the fact that you have no responsibility over quality, because you also have very little control over quality. On the very other end of the spectrum, you have a lot of control over quality, but that's not necessarily a good thing, but because that also means you have full responsibility over quality. What that means is that when you buy something off the shelf, you need to be very aware of doing proper due diligence to make sure that an application meets your business needs, but it's also of the right quality level, so you don't run into problems later on. But when you're custom building something, you really need to monitor and pay attention to the right level of quality. And I'm just checking now. So another box again. Please see this as your portfolio. And there's a number of types of technical debt. There's a technical debt you know about, you have it fully mapped out, you know it's there, you might even have a plan to solve it. Then there's the unknown technical debt. Unfortunately, that will always be there because there's just something that you don't know at all. And then there's the partially known technical debt. And when I say partially known, it can mean many things. It can mean either the knowledge is scattered, so only a few people know about the technical debt. People know about the technical debt, but might have no clear idea on the solution or how to remove the technical debt. It could be that there's just a limited understanding of what's really going on, and it's more of an intuition that exists among some people. We often hear the results from technical debt. A system is unreliable, and that could be in part due to a piece of technical debt. And because we want to make it as interactive as possible, Tibor, could we do a small poll already?
Yes, absolutely, Robert. Let's start with our first poll. So what we are also interested in is how you at your own organization manage technical debt. And the first thing you need to do there is to measure it. So I have a small poll here which asks you about what do you use as the most important input for technical debt management. So I'm gonna launch it now. I think you should see the poll. Yeah, feel free to answer the poll, and we'll have a quick chat about what we see in the results.
That's nice. We cannot vote as panelists, so we won't cloud
No,
the results.
Can't influence it. Okay, we got about half of the people who voted. Let's
have a look at the answers.
Again, now there's still lots of them coming in, so give it a little more time.
It's not an easy question, of course.
Okay. So I see someone raise the hand. If that person has a question, please type it into the QA and we can answer it. Right, I'm gonna close the poll. We've got some quite some entries here. So let's share the results. So that's I think an interesting result. So of course we have some Sigrid users in here. And I see that also manual estimation is also still used, which leads to a combination of the above. Robert, do you see what place does manual estimation have if you're using it in combination with Sigrid?
I definitely see there's a role for that as well. It's it basically we try to make it as easy as possible to get a good grasp on the amount of technical debt you have, but there still is a role for manual estimation and some experience there, some technical experience. But overall, I'm actually quite happy with the results I'm seeing. We see that most people either use other tooling, they use Sigrid, they use a combination of all of the above, and only a small group has no access to measurement at this point, which we could see as a negative, but I do want to turn it positive. That means that there's a lot of ground to be gained. There's a lot you can do there, because you can really improve when you start improving your knowledge. And that is a very nice bridge to the next slide, Tibor. So if you don't mind, we can just continue onward. Because what your role within the organization is, whatever your role is, whether you're a developer or you're a manager or you're C-level, one of the tasks that you have is to get to know more about the technical debt you have, because knowledge is power and knowledge gives you options. So how do you increase that knowledge? That's a combination of expertise, of the right expertise, the right processes, and the right tools. And Sigrid is a tool that, as Pepijn already mentioned in the earlier keynote, combines about 20 years of consultancy experience with factual measurements. And that makes Sigrid really a good place to start with mapping your technical debt. So that takes us to the next step. You've gotten to know your technical debt a lot better. And what you have found is probably that you have a combination of maintainability issues, security vulnerabilities, outdated libraries, architectural anti-patterns, performance bottlenecks, and one special one, which I unfortunately cannot focus on too much today, is the immature development practices, because lots of technical debt stems from the fact that either the expertise within development teams is not up to the right level, or developers are not facilitated in the right way by proper tooling, by a proper build line. And that can in turn lead to the introduction of a lot of technical debt. So sometimes preventing technical debt is as simple as basically improving the development practices. So, but you've already managed now to get a good view on the technical debt. What is then the next step? By the way, this is not an exhaustive list. There are many forms of technical debt, but there's only so much room in the slide. So this is what I came up with. The The next part is then the realization that not all technical debt actually should be repaired. To give a very simple example, you always need to take the technical context and the business context you always need to take that into account. If a system is of low business criticality, it's already old and is about to be phased out, it makes no sense at all to start worrying about the technical debt that there is. While on the other hand, you've just started development on a system which is going to be very important, and it's important to your strategy. That is exactly the place where you want to tackle your technical debt, because there you will get a high return on investment, because as you want the quality of the software you touch the most to be the highest. So when you start setting goals, which I really want to focus on, because goals are the way to improvement, you should really set them in that green area where there's a high return on investment. But I already mentioned that it was going to be simple, but I do want to make it actionable as well. So I want to take you a bit into how to set these goals. Well, setting the right KPIs. Oh, by the way, Tibor, I kind of forgot that we had a nice poll here. Could we just basically, before we switch to this level, could we do another poll?
Yeah, absolutely, Robert. So
I didn't.
the second point, the poll sort of continues on the first one, because, okay, now you've measured your technical debt in your organization, but now you come to the technical, the second point, is there enough time to actually work on reducing the technical debt? And of course, there's always a sort of the contrast between building new features and reducing technical debt. So very simple question. Do you feel that in your organization, enough time is available to work on reducing technical debt? So there we go. And I'm looking forward to your results. And this, as you know, Robert, this is often an issue, for example, with legacy systems, where it can take a while to see any significant change in reducing technical debt. Sometimes a little easier with new systems. But it's always something that is on the table, so to say. So let's see. I see many questions, reactions coming in. So let's wait a little more.
Mm-hmm. You make very good points, Tibor. It's definitely always context dependent on how much time, how much effort you're willing to spend. I think what we really contribute here is to have the discussion about technical debt to begin with. As long as it's being discussed, it's top of mind, and that's that allows you to take the right courses of action.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I think most who wanted to vote have done so. So I'm going to end the poll and now publish it. And yeah, we see some interesting results here. That in almost 60% of the cases there is minimal time, and I think that is not surprising. But I think this makes the case very clear that if you are working on technical debt, you should really work on the technical debt with the highest ROI. Yeah. Correct, Robert?
That's definitely the case. I mean, there is minimal time available, so you really want to make a good business case work out for the technical debt that you do tackle. And that with Sigrid, we help you make that business case. On the other hand, it also makes the case that you want to be really careful not to introduce the technical debt, because every piece of technical debt you introduce, you're likely not to get the time to fix it. So, and that's, again, I didn't plan it that way, but I think that's a really nice bridge to the next topic. That is the following. So we already talked about setting goals. That does require you to have the right KPIs or metrics or whatever you want to call it. So, but the problem is software is not like a building which you just inspect, you can walk through it. Typically, you need tools to assess the quality of software. But there's many problems that are in place that hinder getting these right KPIs and these in turn these right goals. So development teams typically have their own quality guidelines, And as a result, development teams also use their own tool stacks, which in part is a result from the fact that they might have different technologies they're working with. And tool results usually remain internal to the team because, yeah, it's hard to place the results into context. And at some point, these tools tend to generate so many findings that they are just too much to realistically process. So what we see over at our clients that have some other quality tools in place, these tools produce lots of findings, but development teams simply don't have the capacity to actually do something with these findings. Well, at Software Improvement Group, we help clients set these KPIs. And one of the ways that we help to prevent the introduction of technical debt is actually to make these contractual guidelines which lead to better vendor management. But you could also look at it from a different perspective. We also help internal teams with better quality guidelines that resonate throughout an organization. And before I focus on that a little bit more, we are up to our final poll. And well, I really want to kickstart it, Tibor. Can you help me?
Yeah, so to further on technical debt, and what you say is you also shouldn't introduce it, because if you prevent technical debt, you don't have to clean it up, and that's of course the most efficient way to deal with that. And if you want to prevent it, you can set, let's say, KPIs to have a certain quality, right? To make sure that any source code that you add to your code base is of a good quality, so you don't introduce the technical debt. So the question here is, for efficient management, have you actually set those KPIs in your organization? But also, where did you do this? Is this something that you set within the development teams, and maybe they can even decide for yourself? Or do you have organization-wide KPIs that are the same for all development teams, or at least have a common framework behind them? So I'm going to launch that poll now, and I'm really looking forward to your input. And again, I think there's also not a single answer, single good answer here. It really depends on what kind of organization you are. I do think, and that's no surprise, that it's good to have them. And then how you implement them is the second step. So let's see a lot of results coming in here. So let's see. Yeah, okay, I think we've got almost most of them they're coming in. So waiting for the last couple of them, and that's actually also an interesting results. So here we see really mixed results, I would say. So some have them at the organization level, other within development teams. For some, it's not known or not set. So yeah, a bit of a mixed bag. Robert, if you look at organization-wide versus development teams, is there any specific preference here?
I think at some point, even though there is a tendency to make teams self-steering, be really self-sufficient, so to say, I think quality is something that you really want to have a large-scale overview within the organization. And let's not forget that teams also can learn a lot from each other, and having a single platform, having a single point of truth can definitely help there. Another thing is that what you typically see with organization-wide KPIs is that they tend to become qualitative. They include words such as good or sufficient quality, while actually providing metrics, that becomes very difficult. And especially if it's decided in the teams, and you have metrics set A from team A and metrics set B of team B, how can you ever compare the teams? But that's a real challenge, and that's something that we would like to solve.
All right, well, that's a great ambition, but what I've seen also in Pepijn's strategy, I think we're going to provide some great input there. All right.
Yeah. So let's see what we've done. So there's I want to focus shortly on the way that we do our measurements. The first slide that I want to show you is on how we tackle maintainability. Basically, what we do in a nutshell is combine an entire portfolio in a single platform, providing you with a single point of truth. And the way we measure is not by providing you with a metric such as how many findings there are. We provide you with a metric that shows you how you compare to the market. We have a benchmark of many systems. And when you get a rating, which is a rating between 1 and 5 stars, that star rating tells you how do you compare to the market. So it immediately provides you with a clear context, and it allows you to take on the approach of getting software right instead of getting it perfect, what is typically propagated by some other tools, which just provide you with list of findings with the implication that you should solve them all. And yeah, basically we have done this for many years, and we have quite an extensive benchmark, and we can support over 285 technologies, which is another reason why we can even offer that single point of truth. So I also want to show you something about security as well. And Pepijn already mentioned that we are hard at work with taking our security proposition even further. But what we can already offer is industry-leading third-party tooling, which we have configured, which means that you're only shown the relevant findings and not the findings that are typically produced by these systems that have little relevance to the system at hand. And again, we provide a single point of truth in terms of security for the entire organization. What we're moving towards is that we will be able to offer best of breed open source tooling, which is then integrated into Sigrid. So you will have many tools at the click of a button. And by the way that we aggregate these tool results and the way we prioritize it on the basis of a new benchmark approach, which is I would call it revolutionary, we can offer it in a single and understandable way. And we are able to offer you categorization to place the findings into context, and we use industry standards for that. And now on to the actual meat, because it is very simple. We try to make it very simple. Setting simple goals allows the entire organization to participate. When you look at maintainability, for example, you could say one of the goals is to improve the maintainability rating of, in this case, eCharge, which is a system in our demo portfolio, to the 4-star level. You'd also set the goal to improve the test code ratio for certain systems. For example, systems that have a high business criticality, which you cannot afford to have failing. When you look at security, you're likely to focus more on SLA. So, for example, you would like to have high-risk security issues addressed within the period of 2 weeks. In the interest of time, I don't want to go over all these goals. We could even think of more than just these. I want to show you how to view these in the Sigrid platform. So I'm going to make a switch. Let's see, new share. I see that I have to make a small adjustment. And thank you for bearing with me. Yes, I'm there. I'm just not seeing the right window, but here we have it. So when you open up the Sigrid platform, and I realize this might be the first time for some of you, you get an overview of your portfolio. And I already mentioned some of the goals. I just want to show you a bit about, I just want to select a few goals and show you how you can see whether you are meeting these goals. So let's have a look at the eCharts and how to get that to the 4-star level. Well, not how to get it there, but if it's there and what to do about it. I'm going to type in eCharts here. And what we see here is that we currently have a maintainability rating of 3.1 stars. That means it's 0.4 stars removed from the 4-star level. And when you're a portfolio manager or you're an architect, you can really talk to your developers and say, how can we get it there? And well, I'm not going into detail on all the metrics there are. We see some clear areas for improvement here on the unit level metrics, where you basically see that there's a lot of complex units and they're also of high size. So this is one of the ways that you can work towards a better level of quality. If, for example, you want to make sure that your test code ratio is up to speed, I'm going to take you back to the portfolio level again. And I already talked a bit about the business criticality. We have metadata in Sigrid, which is filled out by our clients typically. And we really want to focus on the high level, high criticality systems. Then we select the test code ratio, and we can see there's quite a number of systems that actually do not meet that 15% mark that we want to set. So we could, for example, look at e-charts again, but we can also have a look at Zul. That is actually meeting the 25.7%. But if you look at Android Core and Git, for example, there is 0% test code written there. So that's an indication that this is somewhere where you really need to start looking around and seeing how you can improve there. And I would like to stress that there's many goals you can set. And for example, you could, for example, set a goal where you want to have the maintainability not degrade over time. I could basically say the year to date here and see how the maintainability of the systems evolved over time. And then we see that actually most of the systems have improved in maintainability, which is quite positive. I also promise you to have a look at the security. Within our demo portfolio, we currently have a single system that, we have 2 systems actually, that offer security. And I would like to focus on the first one. And what we can already see is that the issue age is on average 7 months, but that might not reflect to the high risk issues. So I would like to focus here only on the high risk issues. So I will filter on the severity being high. And there still, I see that all these issues are about 7 months old. And that is not meeting our SLA of 2 weeks. So there's something going on here. And by deep diving into all these metrics, you can get a good feel of whether your targets are being met. And they are very simple targets, but in practice, we see that they really help clients get their quality back on track. So I'm going to do one more in the interest of time. We might also want to have some time for questions. So I'm going to show you one more, and that's a really interesting one. I'm going to open up the portfolio view again, and I'm going to focus on the new code quality, because that allows you to focus on the code that has been written in the period that you have selected. So you can really get a good grasp on the quality of the code that has just been written. So, and it's only new code, so you're not held back by existing quality. And this is where you really need to be strict to make sure that the technical debt, that there's no additional technical debt being introduced. And I can imagine that this is a lot to take in, and it's only a short demo. And I hope you take away that simple goals can actually get you to a high level of quality. And of course, if you're interested in a more in-depth demo, we will take a lot more time, and I'll be glad to show you around the platform some more. And with that said, I'm really interested in learning whether there are some interesting questions here. Tibor, do you?
Yeah, thank you, Robert, for the great demo and explanation behind it. So yeah, indeed, we've got a couple of questions that have come in. So the first one was, if you look at maintainability, is that the same as technical debt? So would a low maintainability score always mean a lot of technical debt?
It's not synonymous, but it is an important factor in introducing new technical debt. In a system that has poor maintainability, you typically see the technical debt is piled on because it's I would say the ease of use of the code base is not great. So it's very hard to ensure these other quality characteristics as well. That's why we always check that out first. And it's one of our most mature capabilities. So it's not the same. There's many forms of technical debt, but maintainability is a very important one.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Great. That makes it clear. So another question we got is, when you're working on legacy systems, is it still worth investing in reducing technical debt? Sometimes these old systems are so large, the quality is not good. Everybody knows that a lot of technical debt, but is there still a way to improve this?
That's a very good question. Give me a second. I would say that the typical approach, what this question suggests a bit, is that it's an all or nothing approach, and that's something that we hardly ever suggest to our clients. A large system, and especially legacy systems, they've grown very large over the course of years. There's all these components, there's all these modules. Some components and modules, it might make sense to renovate them. Others you might want to replace. I mean, typically it's a monolithic system, and it might pay off to move slowly towards a more service-oriented architecture. So there's many contextual factors into play, but it's not all or nothing.
Okay.
It's taking the right pieces of technical debt and making sure that that is in order.
So you're suggesting a strategic approach where you look at let's say the parts of a system that are really worth modernizing and reducing technical debt there. All right.
And that's a combination of technical context and business context.
Right. Well, over to our very last question. Little focused on a specific domain. Embedded code, often used in automotive and aerospace. There, what you often have to do there is make a trade-off between, for example, maintainability and performance and reliability of the system, right? Because that's very important there. Is it also worth in that area to look at technical debt if you have other, let's say, other criteria to take into account?
So even if you cannot actually prevent technical debt, it's good to know it's there. You know where it's coming from. And moving into the future, it might mean that a switch to a different technology, if that's possible, could even improve maintainability and the introduction of additional technical debt as well. But it's a difficult question. There are reasons to favor performance over maintainability, but in modern technologies, you typically don't have to.
Okay. Right. Well, thank you so much. It's 4 o'clock exactly. So this also marks the end of Commit 2021. I want to thank you all for being here. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to your contacts at SIG or contact us via the website. And for now, I would like to say goodbye, and I hope to see you in the spring of next year for our next Commit.
Thank you all for joining us today. We hope to welcome you again at the 2022 spring edition of SIG Commit. If you're interested in a personalized Sigrid demo for your team, feel free to send us your request via our website. For all other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us via email. Thank you once again and enjoy the rest of your day.